You should never trust a stranger. It's a classic lesson most are taught at a young age. But this goes both ways, as others shouldn't trust what we could be hiding as well. Let's see if our characters can suss out the imposter only pretending to be innocent, and if they can survive the actual threat at hand, as we learn how to beat Little Bone Lodge. Our story begins with the description of a mom, someone who is gentle and kind where needed but ferocious and deadly when it comes to defending their family. Over the course of the film, we'll see just how accurate this is, as we focus on a mother and her daughter at their mountainside farm preparing a cake. This is Rose and her daughter Maisie getting ready to celebrate the birthday of Pa, who we don't get a proper name for. Guess we'll just call him Pa. We do see that the man is wheelchair-bound and in a languid state, able to look around and understand what's going on, but unable to communicate or move on his own. Well, it sure is fortunate he has such loving family members, isn't it? Their quiet evening is soon interrupted, however, by frantic banging at the door, and despite the fact that they're miles from civilization, someone is here begging for help. A young man claims they were in an accident, and his brother is bleeding out. Rose tries to send them away at first, but eventually lets them in reluctantly by unfastening the 5 different door locks. Seems she really takes security seriously. He wasn't kidding, the brother is in a really bad state, unconscious and bleeding badly from a piece of jagged metal in his stomach. And with the nearest hospital being over 100 miles away, along with the storm outside creating the bad road conditions that caused this in the first place, Rose decides to take it upon herself to patch the man up. With Maisie's help, the women are able to remove the impaled object and stitch up the puncture wound, as the young man, Matty, goes to wash himself up. Afterwards, as the patient rests, we learn a bit more details about these incoming strangers as the group talks over stew and coffee. Matty and his brother Jack are from London and were heading to a fishing boat to meet up with a friend when the rain caused them to crash off the road. His brother now wakes and enters the room to confirm their backstory, before attempting to call his mate so they won't be worried and can pick the two of them up. Unfortunately, they're in a horror film, mountainside, and won't be getting a signal anytime soon. Additionally, Rose claims that with it being a working farm, they have no use for phones, television, or even the internet. Heh, that's the real horror. Even a farm can still use some of those things for information, ordering supplies, or for emergencies such as this to call for help. Kind of strange to isolate your family and cut all connections to the outside world. But to each their own. Rose does tell them about a telephone booth down the road and even offers to take them to it, but refuses to do so at this hour and in this weather right now. Jack is displeased to hear this, really needing to make that call before that time. He's even more displeased when he discovers that Matty grabbed the wrong bag, leaving a very important one behind in the car. After getting a bit rough with his brother though, Jack comes up with a plan of action. Matty suddenly starts to act inconsolable, as Rose and Maisie rush in to find the young man screaming about possessions his dad gave him, as Jack explains to the concerned family that some highly important sentimental objects are still left in their wrecked vehicle. Rose shows her motherly side, calming Matty down first and next agreeing to take Jack back to the crash site. Before they go, however, Rose has Matty locked in a bedroom for the night, not trusting him while she's away. A smart, if not overbearing, move to make. She entrusts Maisie with the key and with giving Paul his medicine if she's not back in time to do so. We saw him get this medicine earlier with the birthday cake. Not sure what it is, but he seems to need it quite frequently. After this, the two are on their way, using Rose's SUV to make their way down the road. While driving, the pair of strangers get to know each other a little better. We learn that Rose used to be a doctor, hence the skilled stitch work, and that she used to have a son as well. But unfortunately, a traffic collision took him away from her. Back at the home, the younger ones are also getting to know each other better. Apparently, Mama never lets Maisie talk to anyone, or even out of the house for that matter, so she's very excited to finally have someone else to spend time with. So excited that she immediately breaks her mother's rules and lets Matty out of the guest room. After getting a tour of the house, we find that most rooms are locked and off limits, even to her. But one place Maisie has to call her own is a blanket fort in her bedroom that she shares with her new friend here. She even shares the secret tiny radio she found and uses as her one connection to the outside world. How sweet. And also a little sad. As the two discuss and share their lives with one another, we learn that Maddie and Jack's parents have passed, and that they're constantly drifting from place to place. Geez, seems like both of these kids are having fairly rough upbringings. Back with the other two now, they finally make it to the crash site, and Jack heads in to grab the important bag. Doing so causes him to slip in the mud, and for Rose to rush to help him, only to discover the dead body in the car. Uh-oh. Having seen the cadaver, Jack claims she's in this now as he pulls a gun on the woman and demands to be taken to that phone box. Well, this took a turn. At the phone, Jack calls a man named Mac, claiming that his son is fine and they have the money, but due to an accident, they are staying at the farm. Mac can't wait, however, and says he'll be there to pick them up, at an increased price for this inconvenience, of course. If he thinks that's an inconvenience, wait until he discovers that was his son back in the car there. Rose takes this opportunity to find something to defend herself with, but is quickly caught by Jack, who states that the man coming is a much bigger threat to her family than he himself is. But he and that sack of cash will be what stands between Mac and her family. So she needs to cooperate for now, and everyone can go their separate ways with all their limbs still intact. Meanwhile, back on the farm, Maisie and Maddie are getting along wonderfully when the radio interrupts with a public service announcement warning of a pair of dangerous criminal brothers wanted for murder, named Matthew and Jack. He panics and throws the device, shattering it, but Maisie assures him she doesn't think he's bad and believes him when he says he didn't hurt anyone. Yeah, let's hope it's just a misunderstanding. Regardless, she gets him back to the guest room in time to avoid trouble with her mom arriving, just in time for her to arrive moments later and for Jack to demand at gunpoint for the room to be opened again anyway. He gathers them up in the living room and explains that if there's no funny business, the two of them will be gone in the morning without anyone getting hurt. Rose does request to give Pa his medication, and the gunman says to be quick about it, or there won't be any amount of meds that will put Pa back together again. Yikes. Could there have been anything done to avoid this situation? Well, of course, the most obvious one is to not let strangers into our home in the first place. As cold as it is, they have 5 locks on the door for a reason, and could have sent the brothers away when they first came knocking for help. Heck, for all we know, that could have been a clever act the two put on to trick people into letting them in, with Jack faking his injuries. But ultimately, Rose does have a softer side for helping those in trouble, and the story proved to be true. But regardless, we need to be more cautious with strangers, keep a close eye on them at all times, restrict their access to the house, which it seems she already does with Maisie unfortunately, and have a defensive plan ready in case something goes south like it does in the film. Something like a weapon or an emergency escape route would do nicely. Better than waiting until after this reveal and getting caught looking for a weapon after the fact. As for the brothers, I don't know why they would use their real names in this scenario. Maybe Maddie was in too much of a panic with his brother potentially dying, but it would have been wise to use fake names while on the run from the law. Had they done so, Maisie would be none the wiser when the radio broadcast went off. Of course, that still wouldn't have stopped Rose from seeing the dead body and revealing their true natures anyhow, but it's still a smarter decision for laying low. Of course, Rose should never have gone out with Jack in the first place. Why risk going out in a severe storm in the middle of the night just for some belongings? Wait until morning when the roads are safer and it's brighter so it's easier to see things. If Jack still insists, it would be highly suspicious and clue us in on the shady dealings. Not only that, but this way we won't have to leave our daughter home alone with a stranger or be out with one by ourselves. As we see, the man is armed, and if he wasn't so appreciative of the help received, could have done a lot worse to a witness who now knows too much. A car approaches the farm and Jack is freaking out, knowing it's too soon for that to be Mac already. Sure enough, it's a cop just happening to do a random inspection. Well, not exactly random, as there's a nationwide manhunt for the two brothers staying there. Jack gets his firearm ready, but Rose warns that violence will only bring more of them, so she'll get the officer to leave. Ah, I see she's played Grand Theft Auto as well, and knows the importance of keeping your star level down. As the police constable explains the situation for the search and imposes for some coffee, he notices something off about a nearby photograph. Additionally, Pa seems to be trying to say something and attempting to move his arms as much as possible. Strange, Rose claims it's simply involuntary spasms from lack of medication though, as she tries to hurry the officer out the door. As the officer goes to leave, however, he recognized the small girl in the photo and what was off about it, claiming that she and her whole family disappeared several years ago. Just as he puts the facts together, Paul gets the strength to roll his chair into the hall and begs the cop for help. Jack takes this as a sign that Paul is trying to rat out his brother and him, so he attacks the constable. Meanwhile upstairs, Maisie uses the distraction of the fight to get the drop on Maddie with a vase, knocking him unconscious before going to see the commotion herself. After an intense struggle between the two men, the cop's training proves more effective and he's able to subdue the crook. But the victory is short-lived, as immediately afterwards Rose comes around the corner with a double barrel and gives the man's neck some fresh air, before knocking Jack out herself. That's right, Paul wasn't asking to get rescued from the criminal brothers, but to get rescued from Rose herself. As he turns to Maisie and tells her to run, Mama comes over and injects him with some more medicine, rendering him lethargic once again. The young girl is so confused, having heard her father speak for the first time, and it being an instruction to flee, as well as seeing her mother murder a cop, someone who was supposed to be one of the good guys, she was told. But Mama Rose clarifies that the cop was confused and would have tried to take Maisie away from her, something she can never allow happen, as she will always keep her daughter safe. Alright, if you haven't figured it out by now, the movie will confirm it soon enough. Rose kidnapped Maisie at a young age several years ago, along with her father, lying to one about her origins and keeping the other in an almost comatose state to form the perfect family. Seems Jack and Maddie weren't the only criminals out here, and they stumbled upon something darker than they realized. But things will be revealed soon that show the situation is even more disturbing than we know when we find what Mama is hiding in her workshop. After handcuffing the brothers to the basement wall and locking the door, Rose has Maisie help her hide the cop's body, as every good mother does. They drive the police cruiser to the criminal's crash site and stage it to look like the officer died in the line of duty in some standoff. Honestly, not a bad idea for both covering up the murder and distancing yourself from the wanted criminals. Meanwhile, in the farm cellar, Jack is working on an escape by just barely reaching some nearby tools and using that to reach even more useful utensils. With enough effort, the boys are able to get free from the wall before using a saw to get free from the cuffs and give themselves matching bracelets. And while the basement door may be sealed shut, for some reason the cellar doors outside are left wide open. You'd think a security nut like Rose with a huge secret to hide would have ensured everything was bolted tight. Oh well. Maddie wants to just escape while they can, but Jack says they can't without Mac's help, and for that they need the money. This all leads to a bit of an argument between the brothers, where Matty learns for the first time that their mother didn't die, but actually abandoned them as children, with Jack trying to take care of them ever since. He later put Matty in a care center to give him a place to stay, but when he accidentally killed a nurse there somehow, the two robbed some places to be able to afford a crime boss's help being relocated overseas. Of course, they also got into that traffic accident, killing said crime boss's son, ending them up here. So they aren't truly heinous people, but they're not completely innocent either. Jack climbs the side of the house to an open window, only unlocked thanks to the storm last night, and enters Mama's workshop. It's a creepy place filled with several blades, anatomy diagrams, and various bones. But he finds something even more grotesque. A woman, barely kept alive with medical equipment, missing limbs, and appendages. This is Bella, Maisie's true mother, and Pa's real wife. Turns out several years ago, she got into a traffic collision with Rose, and the accident resulted in the death of Rose's husband and son. As revenge, the mad woman kidnapped Bella and her family and did this to them. Raises Maisie as her own, pretends Pa is her husband while sedating him with drugs, and has cameras all throughout the house for Bella to watch. And if that wasn't enough, she also tortures her by removing various body parts from time to time, using her medical knowledge to keep the woman alive throughout. Yeah, that's some pretty sick next level stuff right there. Bella asks Jack to call for the police, but he claims he can't do that, being a wanted criminal himself and all. So she next asks if he can at least help her sleep. And by that, she means the forever sleep, which he obliges with. Alright, that's a lot to take in. Let's take a breather and recap a bit. For dealing with the police officer, Jack should have been more patient and not jumped the man. Had he waited, or simply noticed the officer was suspicious of Rose, he could have let her fight the cop and end up dragged off to jail while he and his brother simply escaped out the back. I understand being a bit jumpy in that situation, however, but that's all the more reason to be level-headed when it comes to these things. For Maisie, she actually finds the dead officer's cell phone and pockets it, but reluctantly gives it back when her mother starts worrying about other cops using it to track his whereabouts. This was a foolish idea, as she can easily tell something is wrong with the situation and what her mom has done. She should have kept it and gotten help, both to avoid dealing with the criminal brothers and the man they have about to visit the farm, and to deal with the overbearing and psychopathic mother. But either she's been too brainwashed or just cares about her mother that much, despite everything, to keep the phone for herself, which I can understand to a degree. For dealing with said criminal brothers, Rose should have locked them up in a room with less resources, and regardless of where she puts them, she should make sure every entrance and exit is locked, not just the main one. However, she was in a rush with both the dead cop to get rid of and Mac being on his way, so we can forgive making a mistake or two here. And lastly, for the brothers, they really should have escaped while they could. The money is important, but we can't buy anything if we're dead. Also, Mac is going to cause some heads to roll when he finds out his baby boy is butchered, and leaving now would hopefully cause us to avoid dealing with that directly. If we do go in and discover just how much of a psychopath Rose truly is, as if seeing her game end an officer wasn't enough, we could use that to our advantage and just lie to Mac claiming Rose took him out. This could pit our two problems against one another, allowing us to escape while they fight, or be on Mac's good side possibly if he comes out victorious. Rose and Maisie return, and upon noticing the cellar door open and sheep out in the yard, Mama puts together they've escaped to the barn. Investigating it, she finds Maddie hiding. She shows her softer side once again, feeling bad for the boy and stating he can join their family if he likes, where she'll take care of him always. Oh, how sweet, if you ignore the fact that her family consists of captives and torture victims. But the boy is emotionally compromised enough that this sounds like a great idea to him. Meanwhile, Jack retrieves the money bag and after stapling his freshly opened wound back together, runs into Maisie on his way out. He tells the young girl the truth about what's been going on her whole life, how Rose isn't her real mom, and how her and Pa are victims. With photos gathered from the workshop as added proof along with recent events, Maisie believes him, and she agrees to run away with the man. Somehow they're able to sneak out and past Rose, even with Pa coming along too, but Jack goes back to find Matty, not knowing his brother has switched allegiances. Should have just let his brother be, as returning to the house has Jack end up shot for his trouble. Just a grazing hit though. Maddie tries to stop his new mother from hurting his brother, but she reminds him that Mac is going to want someone dead for what happened, and Jack is just the scapegoat they need. Fair point. Jack gets the drop on Rose now, but Maddie stops him from finishing the woman off, screaming he wants to stay here and no one else to die. But when his brother won't listen, Maddie starts beating on him. I can see how he might have accidentally killed a person or two now. Thankfully, Maisie comes back for Jack now, and the two make their escape, while the other pair regroup as well. After a standoff in the barn where Maisie stands up for herself finally, Mac finally arrives, much to the worry of the brothers. With few options left, Jack passes the car keys to Maisie, wishes her luck, and bolts to the relative safety of the crime boss. This is enough of a distraction for the young girl to make it to the escape vehicle, as Rose is more concerned with her hatred toward Jack than she is her artificial love for her adopted daughter. Jack tells the crime boss that the woman is crazy, having stolen the money and his son. This lie might have worked if it wasn't for the fact that Mac and his driver discovered the wrecked vehicle on their way here along with his deceased son. So now it's a standoff between Mac and Rose. She offers the man both the money and Jack's life but refuses to hand over Matty. This doesn't work for the man who wants both brothers dead for what they did to his son. While distracted, however, Jack stabs Mac with a knife he nicked from the workshop, creating an opening for Rose to finish him. Too bad she doesn't notice the henchman that took the long way around to flank her, who beats both her and Matty unconscious. Before he can retrieve the firearm to finish anyone off, however, Maisie comes out of nowhere with the SUV and runs him over. Nice! Now all she has to do is grab Jack and they can go. Wait, why is she still driving? Where is she going? And she left him. We see in the epilogue that Pa has made a full recovery, and Maisie is in good hands now, so that's good at least. Meanwhile, somewhere in another part of the country, Maddie and his new mama are enjoying a lovely family meal together. Oh, that's nice. And Jack's there too. Well, in the attic, watching through cameras as he's drugged up, barely kept alive with hospital equipment, and has his limbs and appendages slowly amputated over time. Almost a happy ending for everyone. What could we have done differently? Well, as stated before, Jack could have just left with Maisie and Pa, leaving Maddie to his own devices. He seems like he wanted to be done with the lad as it was. But I guess they do share a bond, and we can't fault Jack for that. However, once he starts getting shot at, and when he sees how much Maddie is defending the woman, he should have realized that this is what his brother wants and just left. Heck, they could even propose a trade, as both Maisie and Maddie seem happier with the opposite group. Rose likely wouldn't have agreed to this with how clingy she was to her stolen daughter, but she has shown a kinder side before and might have been able to be appealed to with enough reason. Upon Mac's arrival, Jack should have realized not to lie about the man's son being within Rose's custody. I mean, even if Mac believed him and took out the woman, it wouldn't be long before he discovered the trick and Jack would pay the price for it. Instead, he should have lied about Rose being responsible for killing the son. Once we know what Mac has seen, we can claim she either was the one who ran them off the road for it to happen, or that she ended him and staged his body there with the cop. We likely wouldn't know about the cop's body being set up there, but if we did, or pieced that fact together somehow, it helps strengthen the lie. Regardless, this is more believable than what Jack attempted, and would actually keep Mac in our favor after the dust is settled. Lastly, and most painfully obviously, Maisie should have just stopped the car to save Jack. With the others dead or unconscious, there was no excuse not to rescue him at that point, and even Maddie too. Heck, she even should have gone the extra distance and run over Rose as well to eliminate the only threat remaining. The cops at the end even reassure Maisie that they're going to find the crazed woman. Could have made their job a lot easier by taking her out ourselves while we had the chance, or at least crippled her long enough for the cops to arrive and arrest her. No reason or excuse to not do this other than just being scared and wanting to get out of there as soon as possible. Which is honestly understandable, but we can't always run from our fears and problems, as that can just allow them to get worse. We have to deal with them while they're still manageable to avoid facing bigger issues in the future, or having them become someone else's problem. Don't let your fears stop you from living your true life. Your true life.